Guys, glad you're with us. If you missed yesterday, or if you're watching this for your virtual async day, let's walk you through everything you need to know so you don't miss a thing. So, first of all, some heads ups just so you know. So remember, your War Poetry Major Summative, that's due. So if you're an A-day kiddo, that was due Thursday, 4:15 before 11:59 p.m. So if it's late, get it in. If you are a B-day kiddo, that's due Friday, 4:16 before 11:59 p.m. You got all day. Don't procrastinate too long. Remember, today obviously is an async day. That's what we're looking at. So Friday, the 16th, is an async day. Also, before next class, so before I see you either on Tuesday or Wednesday, reading journal number 1 is due, so make sure that gets finished. And also, don't forget, Tuesday, 4:20, we're going back to 4-day hybrid in person. Okay, so just in case you can't remember what we did last or what's coming up, let's take a look at where we've been, where we're going. So, where have we been? Well, last class we went ahead and we started our SOL review. We went ahead and we talked about what a reading journal was, and we even took a look at nonfiction, literary nonfiction day 1. We gave you time to work on your War Poetry Major Summative during independent work time, and that kind of brings us to today, right? So we're going to do some nonfiction SOL review. After we finish that up, time to go ahead and move on to literary nonfiction day 2. We'll give you time to go ahead and work on reading journal number 1, and of course, independent work should you need it to go ahead and knock off and submit your War Poetry Major Summative. So without further ado, let's get going. With nonfiction SOL review, it's going to be kind of a lot for me to be talking at you. So that's why what I did is I went ahead and I added the link right down here in the description of the video. So go ahead and click the first link down. You're going to be able to go ahead and follow along for the actual working through of, how you do some nonfiction SOL questions. Now, there's one more thing though. We do kind of want to go ahead and test your skills and just see how much of that you gathered. So the second link down, after you first link and work through the first link, the second link down there is actually going to be to a Google form, which is going to look like this, just 4 questions, making sure that you got it. So right now, let's go ahead and give you a chance. Go ahead and pause the video. Go ahead and do the first link down below to kind of read through how you're going to do inference, implied main idea right there, and synthesis questions. And after you finish through that first link, go to that second link and go ahead and try that Google form. I'll go and pause. You pause with me, and let's see if you can get this knocked out. Nice job. So that brings us right into literary nonfiction day number 2, expecting complexity. So remember, last class we talked about facts and central ideas and themes. And we were kind of thinking about, how, of course, a fact is like a specific detail or a date or a location or something that happened. We know those. And themes are easier for us to work with, right? Because themes we've been working with all year and last year, kind of those 1 or 2 word generalizations towards life. But we also are looking for central idea, right? Central idea that's where there was some kind of message the author was trying to tell us about the topic. So if we kind of take a look further in those, there's one thing you need to know, that you got to be ready for complexity. So if you think about Tennyson's Charge of the Light Brigade that we read previously, think about some of the lines he said. He said, someone had blundered. Remember, blundered made like a mistake. Into the mouth of hell. Gosh, that was really foreboding, right? And then even shattered and sundered. Negative connotation everywhere, right? But he also wrote stuff like this, when can their glory fade? Oh, the wild charge they made. He's talking about war being glorious, right? And even honor the Light Brigade, noble 600. He's talking about how it's honorable and noble. So, with Tennyson, it's not all black and white. He's kind of saying, war is this, but also that. He's saying, war can be dangerous, but also honorable. War can be destructive, but also noble. For Tennyson, it's not explicitly one way or clear or black and white. There's nuance and shade of gray. And what we need you to know is in your nonfiction that you're reading, you have the same thing. You have that complexity. So you need to start expecting it. So you're going to expect complexity. So it's not enough to just read being like, okay, cool, whatever, there's a story with stuff going on. We want you to start expecting that things are going to be a little bit more than they seem on the page. And you can do that by asking yourself 2 questions. What else does this imply? And what other ideas does this part suggest? So that you can kind of start looking at things with a different frame. Let me go ahead and actually show you what I mean, okay? In our first read aloud that we read yesterday from Hidden Figures, we saw that, of course, the working conditions for people doing ridiculously strenuous labor of the laundry were just awful. They had to step outside in 100 plus degree summer heat to get relief from the temperatures indoors. So that was just a plain fact, right? That was just a fact that indoor work conditions were terrible for these workers. But maybe there's something deeper going on, and maybe that's what I'm kind of starting to think about because, well, the vast majority of the workers there were not just women, but they're also black women. So if I'm thinking about how these black women were in such terrible working conditions, then maybe it's not so. Maybe it's not just a fact. I need to look beyond that. That maybe there's some undertones or elements of racism going on that I kind of need to be paying attention to, right? Even if I'm thinking about here, the fact of they earned 40 cents an hour. So we know that, gosh, 40 cents an hour doesn't seem like much. And maybe if we just read that and moved on, we'd miss the larger thing that if we're thinking about this in terms of complexity, if you're living in poverty with very few work opportunities, what might seem like a meager salary of 40 cents an hour to someone might feel like, as the author put it, a windfall or a huge sum to someone else, right? And even when we're taking a look at, the amount that school teachers were paid in Virginia, being some of the lowest salaries in the United States, and then black teachers earning 50% less than that. Remember, this is something to keep in mind, Dorothy Vaughan, she chose to be a teacher. And if I just simply read those facts about, not just what white educators in Virginia were making, but black educators in Virginia were making, I could just completely miss the fact of what does that tell me about Dorothy Vaughan, right? What does that say about her as a person that she still so values the status and the impact of this job, even though it pays nothing? That tells me a lot about her, right? And I could even look, at one of the it's a fact. It says that Dorothy had to live in employee housing during the week and she could only go home on weekends. Well, if I look further in that, gosh, what's that saying about her and her family? That if I stop and actually think, what else does this mean? What else does this imply here? Like, she's really making some enormous sacrifices for her family, right? Or even here, when it says she knew that schooling was the best way to prepare her children to live in a world that would require more of them than white children and attempt to give them less in return, maybe that's starting to tell me that, overcoming obstacles, or at least attempting to, requires enormous sacrifice that some people can't even fathom. And all these extra little details that I'm kind of looking into are because I'm approaching this text knowing and expecting it's going to be complex. It's not all black and white. It's not just, here's the way it is, Kurzman, look at it. It's no, there's more going on beneath the surface, so I really need to be reading critically. So here's what we want you to do. As you're reading your book, expect that complexity. Continue to question yourself, well, what does that imply? Or what's really going on here? Or maybe even using some of your thought prompts. Maybe it's deeper than that. Maybe there's something else. Read with complexity in mind. And that's actually going to help you for your reading journal. So if you take a look, this is waiting for you in Schoology in your nonfiction folder. Within your nonfiction folder, there's a whole folder for reading journals, and there's the assignment called Reading Journal number 1. What we want you to do is go and respond to the prompt below in at least 300 words using thought prompts. And hey, crazy, that word thought prompts turns into a link, and if you click it, it's got all the thought prompts. So click it, right? And make sure you have specific evidence from the book. Oh, by the way, if you want to get an A+ on this, not just an A, some of the thought prompts are highlighted in yellow to go and help you look at multiple different theories. Use those, okay? So the prompt is this. What are some central ideas you see within your nonfiction reading? And what's a theme or themes you see? If you forget what a central idea is, click on that link. You'll get a reminder. If you forget what a theme is, here's a huge laundry list of themes to kind of keep in mind. Let's go ahead and tell us the title of the book. Go ahead and tell us what page you're on, and at least 300 words, including thought prompts and textual evidence. Go ahead and talk to us about some of the central ideas you're seeing emerge and themes that are coming through in your book so far. Go ahead, let's go ahead and give you a chance to go ahead and pause. Remember, over into Schoology, into our nonfiction folder, into your reading journal folder, and read one. Let's go ahead and pause the video. Give you about 25, 30 minutes. Go ahead and knock off this first reading journal. I'll be right here. Good luck. Excellent. All right. So that kind of brings us to the end, right? So when it comes to independent work time, what we did is we worked and submitted our war poetry major summative. Couple suggestions for you. Number one, use those links in Schoology. What links? Well, if you go into Schoology and you go into our war poetry folder, you're going to see the first link is for the Padlet. The second link there is for the war poetry major summative, you know, the thing that's due. And also that third and final link, don't forget about that. That's a link to all the poems. Check that out. My second suggestion is actually to go back and reread what you wrote on the Padlet. Take a look at your 3 answers and pick the one answer you wrote that was the most enjoyable to write, or the easiest to write, or the easiest to support with text evidence. Take that and copy it. My last suggestion is to go ahead and open up a Google Doc or a Google Slides or maybe your script that you're going to use for recording an audio or video recording on Schoology and paste. Remember, you're not done yet. Remember, the questions in the major summative are a little bit more complex than the one on the Padlet, so make sure you're using questions from the assignment sheet in Schoology. Make sure that you're using at least 2 quotes from at least 2 different poems. That's for a total of at least 4 quotes. Make sure you've got those in there. And also commentary. We want to make sure you've got strong commentary in there. So your commentary, if you don't really have any commentary, you just have your quotes, are kind of in the C range because you're not explaining what that evidence is doing there. If you only really give us like 1 sentence of commentary per quote, that's starting to tell us what it's there, but it's not developed. So you're kind of in the B range. If you give us at least 2 sentences of commentary for every single quote you have, that begins to show us your thought process, your logical leaps, and that begins to kind of let us peer into the mind of what you're kind of thinking about, of how these pieces of evidence are supporting your ideas, your reasoning, and your answers. So we want to make sure we've got that commentary. Again, if you have questions or if you need help, go and email me. But that's it. Good luck. You got this.